morning, and we are back, baby, talking about our Week 8 wide receiver rankings, and that is quite the intro. To get us going, it is myself, Jesse Moore, aka JM105, with my co-host Jeremy Schumann at FF_Rebel. How you doing today, Jeremy?
Yeah, it's 10:10 over here in the PM. I'm trying my best to keep my eyelids open. I was just lamenting the fact that I have to walk the dog and put the dishwasher on and then go through every single one of my 30 lineups and make sure that Puka Nakua and Cooper Kupp and Matthew Stafford are injected into them for Thursday Night Football. So yeah, it's gonna be a long night. How you doing?
Yeah, it's going good. We're recording pre Thursday Night Football, so these rankings are going to be pre Thursday Night Football. This episode will come out on Friday, so if we have something with Puka and he comes out, he's not in the rankings. This is why. So this is kind of what our schedule. But yeah, for the content creators that want to know, if you want to be a content creator, sleep is not for you. I'm just going to say that. If you have a life, job, and then this stuff on top of it, you just got to give up sleep. That's the life we live. It's the good stuff, as we say. But yeah, on that note, let's kick it off. Let's go to your tier one. These are your wide receivers 1 through 3. So these are the big dogs. They're all expected to eat. And no surprise, it is Justin Jefferson at wide receiver 1, the best wide receiver in football. He's going up against the Rams. AJ Brown, wide receiver 2, the guy who is the wide receiver 1 on points per game basis, going up against Cincinnati. And he's back in our lives. Tier 1, Mr. Tyreek Hill, wide receiver 3, going up against Arizona in a juicy matchup. Who would you like to wax poetically about?
Well, let's talk about Tyreek because he's back. He said as much in an interview this week that he said, "Start me." The band is back. The band is back together. I don't know what he said, but he said basically, "I'm going to go nuclear." He's been waiting for this, and he faces Arizona at home. I mean, it couldn't be juicier for Tyreek Hill, for really all of these Dolphins. We talked about it in the running back show where we want to fire up Achane and Mostert as a flex as well. I want to play Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle where I have them. But the problem is you haven't been able to play these guys since Tua's been gone. Since his week 1 wide receiver 4 overall finish in half PPR, Tyreek has been the wide receiver 54, 58, 55, 36, 89. And then there was a viral clip going around last week where Tyler Huntley lofted a beautiful ball over the defense to him, and Tyreek Hill just kind of looked the other way and it dropped like a foot in front of him. So, I mean, I don't know what the hell is going on. I don't know if Tyreek gives a crap, but I do know that the ball is going to land very much somewhere near where he can corral it in, and he is going to go for at least 101. That's a minimum for Tyreek Hill this week. He's going to go on.
Yeah, they're still somehow in the hunt at 2 and 4 with how bad their offense has been. Like, it's been just abysmal. And that one clip is hilarious because he legit gave up midway through the route. It was a well thrown ball. Probably should have been a catch, but Tyreek's just like, dude, I ain't doing this. Like, this is just abysmal. We can't. So hopefully McDaniel and the offense can figure it out. The Arizona Cardinals are a very nice matchup to get going. So yeah, if you have Tyreek, he's back. Do not have concerns about him. You fire him up everywhere.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into your let me try that again. Let's jump into your second tier. The wide receivers 4 through 7. We are going with Drake London going against Tampa Bay. The defense that is kind of struggling, and the offense that's really just a disaster right now. So we'll see how that goes. I like Drake London there. Number 5, wide receiver Jamar Chase going up against the Eagles. CeeDee Lamb going up against the San Francisco 49ers in what is hopefully a get-right game for CeeDee Lamb because he's been quite disappointing this season.
Oh, yeah.
And the last guy, Mr. Cooper Kupp, is also back. We're getting all of the old wide receivers that we love getting back in our life. He is healthy. He is playing tonight. He is the wide receiver number 7 against the Minnesota Vikings, who bleed fancy points to wide receivers. So, who would you like to talk about in this tier?
We'll talk about Kupp in a second, but I can't not talk about Drake London. Drake London has been phenomenal. He's received in his last 6 games no fewer than 8 targets in each game, and more than double-digit targets in 3 of those 5 games. So he has been crushing it. And then, of course, the last 3-week PPR, half PPR, wide receiver 2, wide receiver 14, wide receiver 9. So he's been every bit of what you bought into lately. Now that Kirk Cousins has gotten going, now that Bijan is going, they've got this offense flowing. And granted, Tampa Bay, Carolina, Seattle isn't exactly a murderer's row of defenses to face, but he gets Tampa Bay again this week. So that's why he's this high at wide receiver 4. He finishes the wide receiver 2 overall, 13 targets, 12 receptions, 154 yards and a touchdown against Tampa 3 weeks ago. So I think he's going to absolutely maybe he doesn't go off that much, but he is needed. And I think Atlanta gets out to a big lead in this one. So love Drake London. On the other end, we need to talk about Cooper Kupp a little bit. Kupp coming back. We saw the chemistry immediately at the beginning of this season with Matthew Stafford. He was the wide receiver 2 in week 1. Unfortunately, didn't make it out of week 2 unscathed. So, but week 1, 21 targets, 14 receptions for Cooper Kupp. I mean, he was just the Cooper Kupp of old. If he's healthy enough, and I assume he is, because the prognosis on him over Puka was a little bit better. But if, initially, if Cooper Kupp is healthy enough, I think he is going to, maybe not 21 targets. Maybe they lean on Kyron Williams a little bit here in his first game back, but he is locked in for double-digit targets here. I think he's probably locked in for double-digit receptions. And like you said, that Minnesota defense is not stopping him this week.
No, not at all. And to your point on Drake London, he's third in the NFL in targets right now. His expected fantasy points per game, he's top 5. So his usage is awesome because they're passing a lot. And he's a focal point on offense, like 26% target share. And yeah, the guy with the best expected fantasy points role in the NFL is still Cooper Kupp because of how he was used. He got injured. I think it was week 2 he got injured. And he was on pace to have a monster game in that one. But injury happened, and then the offense was like, all right, I guess we're going Kyron Williams. So it'll be nice to see Cooper Kupp back in his role. This game should be a shootout against Minnesota. I'm expecting a lot of points on both sides, and Cooper Kupp should be a fantastic wide receiver for you. So, like we're saying, start the old wide receivers. They are back. They are the dominant forces in our lives. Play them everywhere. Let's go to your tier 3, which is a little bit bigger tier. It's your wide receivers 8 through wide receiver 13. This is where we get ARSB going against the Tennessee Titans. We have Jaden Reed, who has a little bit of a questionable tag. We'll see what that is. He's been kind of up and down, but he's just a really good wide receiver. Going up against Jacksonville Jaguars, which the Jags defense is on the struggle bus. I expect Jaden Reed to have a very good game. Wide receiver 10, Stephon Diggs, going up when we talk about bad defenses. Indianapolis Colts, that is a very bad defense right now. He should be very heavily used in that game. Our wide receiver 11, DJ Moore, going up against the Washington defense, which is like they've kind of figured out, but like they still have that stake around them from the early season struggles. So we'll see DJ Moore. You know what DJ Moore is. He's a very good NFL wide receiver. Next up, T. Higgins, wide receiver 12, who has been better than Jamar Chase at this point in the year. So you have 2 top 12 wide receivers for Cincinnati, and I think that's very valid going up against Philly because Philly's defense struggles against the pass. T. Higgins should eat. And the last guy, the highly touted rookie, Marvin Harrison, at wide receiver 13, going up against Miami. So we'll see if Marvin Harrison can finally get right with that offense because it just seems like it's not clicking for him. But overall in this tier, who would you like to highlight?
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Marvin Harrison Jr. is you can run on the Miami Dolphins, but you cannot throw on them. They are 32nd of 32 teams on fantasy points allowed to wide receivers. That is concerning. I will say, though, a lot of that is because you did not have to keep up with that Miami offense. Now that Kyler is coming in here, now that Tua is back, I think what we're going to see is a bit of a shootout. I don't know if it gets too crazy, but I do know that Kyler is going to have to put the ball up in this one. They're not going to be able to sit back and rely on James Conner to do everything for them. I think MH Shea gets involved, and I think he has a nice day. But the guy I want to talk about here in this tier is Stephon Diggs. Diggs is getting the targets, no fewer than 6 targets on the season. He is approaching double-digit targets in nearly every game, locked in for at least 6 receptions, about 70 yards. And if he scores, he gets vaulted up into that, wide receiver, back-end wide receiver 1 tier. And I have him at 10, so I think that's where he fits in against Indy. That's going to be a sweet matchup for him in week 1. He was the wide receiver 10 against Indy. 6 targets, 6 receptions, 33 yards, but 2 scores from Diggs. I think the volume goes up. The touchdowns come down. We know Nico's not there. So, I like Diggs at 10, and really all these guys are locked in. T, Jaden, DJ Moore, you lock them in.
Yeah, you don't have any concern with these guys. And like it's just a really good group of wide receivers, and it makes sense why they are where they are. And like I know Diggs did not get there, but he still got 7 targets in a game where they just could not do anything offensively in the passing game. That's going to change. Indianapolis defense just struggles against the pass, so I like that one. Let's jump into tier 4. It gets a little bit more interesting in tier 4 with the wide receivers 14 through 18. Still very good guys, but there's a little bit of question marks with them. We have starting out a little bit spicy. Devontae Adams going against the New England defense, which I'm kind of curious to see what's going on with Christian Gonzalez, see where he lines up.
Exactly.
He takes Wilson, he takes Adams. Like I think that's the more like piece that's going to change just a little bit. The next guy, Amari Cooper, back to being a high-end wide receiver 2 for Buffalo, going up against Seahawks. And like I want to start Amari Cooper against Seahawks defense. I've seen it enough. The next guy, Brian Thomas Jr., the highly touted, just really good rookie wide receiver who's been a consistent deep threat all across the season. he's been their one staple that offense that has worked, and I expect him to do well against Green Bay. Wide receiver 17, George Pickens is back to being an impact wide receiver too. Russell Wilson revitalized him with the play action. He's going up against the Giants. And wide receiver 18, Malik Neighbors, he's dropping down a little bit because the offense has just completely just fallen apart. They're going up against a very good Pittsburgh Steelers defense. He rounds out our tier 4. Who would you like to spend time watching about?
We'll talk about Amari in a second, but Malik Neighbors, I think he's necessary. We know he's necessary to this Giants offense. The problem is he's going up against Pittsburgh. He would be higher, but we see, like you said, the Giants have shown that they're going to struggle. Now with their left tackle, Andrew Thomas, out, they're really going to struggle, as we've been talking about all week, and we saw it come to fruition last week. So that is what that is. But Malik Neighbor is going to get the volume in this one. They'll have to, because the Giants will be down 2 scores for the entire game. So I think Malik Neighbors, you plug him in as a wide receiver 2, and you just hope he finds the end zone. And Malik Neighbors, everybody. We'll see if that's possible. But yeah, Amari Cooper for me, I'm really excited to see what he looks like. On more than 35% of the snaps. 35% of the snaps last week in his first game in Buffalo. He was only the wide receiver 12. No big deal. Another day at the office for Amari. He doesn't need to be ramped up, right? He's proven that. The only thing that really he needs to do is understand what it's like to catch a football from a good quarterback, And so, he had that in Dak a while back. He has not had that over the last few years here in Cleveland, but now he's back with Josh Allen. Josh Allen has been hyper accurate. He looks good running around. Amari has the ability, unlike what we were talking about with potentially Keon Coleman, Dalton Kincaid, whatever we see when these quarterbacks who run around, you need a wide receiver to make those adjustments. Amari is a professional wide receiver. I think if he's on the field for 60%, even just continuing the ramp up, I think he's going to go off this week. I have him at wide receiver 15, but I think he could easily be wide receiver 5.
Yes, I'm with you. But I just want to say, how dare you besmirch Joe Flacco saying he's not a good NFL quarterback? Come on. You saw what he did last year. But no, on the real, yeah, I think the interesting with Allen is he's similar to Russell Wilson. He finds ways to extend plays when Russell Wilson was peak. Obviously, he's just an absolute unit of a tank of a man, so he can truck you on top of it too. But yeah, you kind of have to have this synergy with your quarterback where you know kind of when to pop up and make those plays because your quarterback's going to extend the play. And I think that's going to help Amari Cooper. It's just going to be a lot better situation for him. So I'm excited to see him in a full week, like week 2. Get used to Josh Allen. Like they could be a fireworks show the rest of the season. So it's going to be a lot of fun. Let's jump into tier 5. This is your wide receivers 19 through 25. So we're getting kind of the back end wide receiver 2s. Still really good names in this range. Just guys with a little bit more question marks. We have Devonta Smith, he's just a very good NFL wide receiver. Going against Cincinnati. Wide receiver 20, Jalen Waddle. We're back to starting Jalen Waddle. Finally, it feels nice. If you've been holding on Jalen Waddle, congrats. You are rewarded. You get to play him. He's going against Arizona. Wide receiver 21, Zay Flowers. Also, there's a lot of guys in this range. Let me caveat out by saying they have questionable tags. So these rankings might change a little bit with this group. But Zay Flowers has just been the one focal point of that wide receiver room and that passing attack. He's been the most consistent aspect for them. Going up against the Cleveland Browns, Garrett Wilson, wide receiver 22, going up against New England. So he is significantly lower. I think he's 8 spot lower than Devontae Adams for you. But still, back end wide receiver 2. Next up, Puka Nacua, who we are expecting to play. We will see. If he doesn't play, we would drop him down significantly. But wide receiver 23, I'm just like I've said this before. I'm just playing Puka. Like that's just how I'm treating it. I'll just live with the way I'm up. Your wide receiver 24 is Xavier Worthy, who, by the way, if people want to look back, Worthy is the focal point of that offense right now. He's the guy they're focusing on, not Travis Kelce, not anyone else. It's Xavier Worthy. So he just needs to connect, and we're hoping that happens this week in Vegas because let's be real, it's Vegas, and they are a disaster of a team right now. And the last guy rounding out that unit, who I really like this ranking because it's a little bit spicy considering where he's at consensus. Jordan Addison, wide receiver 25, going against the Rams in what we have is a projected shootout, high-scoring affair. Jordan Addison should get there because Justin Jefferson makes his life a lot easier. So in this tier 5, who would you kind of like to talk about?
Yeah, real quick with Addison, no TJ Hawkinson, as we've talked about as well tonight. So that's just going to boost his likely target floor. I think he gets back on track and it's just, when Addison finds the end zone, which is not very difficult for him, but when he finds it, he absolutely blows up. And yeah, I think the Rams are just terrible. Xavier Worthy, we'll see. I have DeAndre Hopkins ranked a little bit lower this week. It's kind of the Amari Cooper treatment from last week. Will he be ramped up and slowly integrated into this offense? I think so, but he'll still have the opportunity to get out there for 30, 40, 50% of the snaps, especially against Vegas, right? There's nothing really on the line here. The Chiefs are going to win this game. But yeah, one guy I got to talk about here is my wide receiver 22, Garrett Wilson. Like you mentioned, Devontae Adams is wide receiver 14. Wilson is 22. We're playing New England. So yes, where's Christian Gonzalez line up? Number one. Number two, who do they focus on in terms of the coverage? Because last week, I forget who the Jets were playing. Was it Pittsburgh?
Yes. Yeah.
The Jets were playing Pittsburgh. And what they did is they focused on the wide receivers, and oops, Breece Hall just got loose on a ton of checkdowns from Aaron Rodgers. But the other thing that Pittsburgh could do that New England really can't do, at least very well, is pressure Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers had such a tough time with pressure. This is the beginning of that schedule where it starts to lighten up a ton, and Rodgers is not going to feel that pressure. So I think all of these weapons eat this week, I think. And the Jets, I think, want to blow somebody out. They might as well blow out the New England this year. I think it's going to happen. It's going to be ugly in Foxborough, and Wilson and Devontae will get there.
Yeah, they need this get-right game. The Jets, they got Adams last week, and they just got the doors blown off by Pittsburgh. And that's not a good sign. The Steelers are a good NFL team, but they're not an elite NFL team. So if they're blowing your brakes off, the Jets have some bigger issues to kind of work through. So, hopefully this week is kind of a get-right game against the Patriots defense, which is kind of just they're struggling. They're not the previous, the vaunted New England defense. That's kind of in the past. It's no longer a thing there anymore. So, we'll see how it goes. I like both of those guys. They kind of split the targets right in the middle. I think they both had 9 targets. Neither one of them really connected last week. So, we'll see if that shifts this week and how Todd Downing uses those 2 players. I think is very interesting. But it's a fun group. And to your point on Worthy and Hopkins, I think, it's going to be similar to Cooper last week. I think it's going to be a full week or 2 before he's ramped up, but Andy Reid said, why wait? Just play him. So we'll see. Who knows? It's going to be interesting with that group. Let's go to your tier 6. And I think it's a little bit of a bigger tier. It's wide receivers 26 through 32. So we'll kind of break this down into 2 parts and talk about it. The first couple guys, wide receiver 26, Terry McLaurin, going against Chicago without what it seems like without Jaden Daniels. So Marcus Mariota as your quarterback brings you down a little bit. The next guy, Deontay Johnson. He's also got a new quarterback. It's Bryce Young once again in our lives. And we saw how this went for Bryce Young and Deontay Johnson early season. It was an outright disaster going up against Denver, a nightmare of a defense. So that's not fun across the board. Wide receiver 28, Chris Olave, looks like he's projecting to play. Maybe he gets Derek Carr back. Maybe he doesn't, but at least he's going to be playing. And hopefully he can work out for him. And the last guy that we'll talk about in this group is Tank Dell, wide receiver 29, going against Indianapolis. Who would you like to highlight here?
I hate all these guys. I hate them all because, they don't have quarterbacks, right? We expected CJ Stroud to be. I just moved Tank Dell above every other name that you mentioned just now because I can't deal with the Marcus Mariota experiment. Terry McLaurin's been great. He's the wide receiver 13. He's looked amazing. No, Mariota's going to continue to do what he did last week and just run around like a chicken with his head cut off and get 70 yards rushing and somehow continue to put this team into field goal range. And that's how they're going to win. They didn't have an issue with it last week against Carolina. Now they're playing Chicago, who, if they're healthy back there in the secondary, we'll have to see if that's the case. But if they're healthy in the secondary this week, it's going to make life very, very difficult for this offense. So I might need to move Terry outside my top 30 right now. He was 27 now. Since I put Dell above him, we'll see. But the targets are there. So I don't know what the hell to do with Terry this week. If I can sit him, I will. But Tank Dell should be Mr. Necessary here. We talked about Diggs. I have him ranked so high only because Tank Dell has done pretty much nothing all season. One game with 9 targets where things look promising. Outside of that, the targets have been there. The receptions have not. The yardage has not. And he has only scored 1 time. So Tank Dell, I don't know what he's doing. He was out there doing wind sprints last week, scoring no fantasy points, getting 4 targets on 72% of the snaps. It's just ugly for Tank. He's got to come alive against Indy, right?
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, that's the hope, right? The one thing that did save him 2 weeks ago is he caught the touchdown. That's what saved him, right? Because he only put up 57 yards. It wasn't a massive game or anything like that, but it had us under the illusion they figured it out. This offense is going to get right moving forward. Tank Dell. Right. I think he's still a little bit hampered by the injury, and we've seen a lot of people who do film analysis talk about that. He's just not the same player he was last year. It's going to take him some time. So I think sometimes we overlook these injuries. We did when we talked about if it's Nico or Tank. It was clearly Nico as wide receiver one on that team. And I think this is why they more like went out of their way to get Stephon Diggs to kind of help them with Tank Dell, because they knew that, you know, it might be a little while till he's back. Let's talk about the other three guys that are rounding out tier 6 for you. You have Lad McConkey, wide receiver 30. I like this one. Lad McConkey, he's dealing with an injury, back spasms, and all that fun stuff. So we'll see going up against New Orleans. Keon Coleman, wide receiver 31, but going up against Seattle, it might seem spicy. I actually really like this call from you. Keon Coleman should be able to get loose on a big player too against Seahawks defense. Oh, yeah. And the last guy rounding it out is Juwan Jennings. He's dealing with a hip injury. We will see if he's going to play, but he is the expected wide receiver 1 for San Francisco, going up against the Dallas defense, which has just been abysmal. So of these three guys rounding out this tier, who do you kind of want to highlight?
Yeah, I think Juwan Jennings is a really interesting play this week. Like we've seen him do this before, right? We haven't seen Ricky Pearsall really do it. We haven't seen Jacob Cowing do it, right? Like what are we expecting here? It's George Kittle and Jordan Mason on the ground and nobody else. Someone needs to step up, and that someone, if he's healthy, is going to be Juwan Jennings, especially against this putrid Dallas defense. Brock Purdy might struggle only because his weapons are lacking, but I think Juwan Jennings gets out on the field this week. They need him. San Francisco's reeling a little bit simply because of all these injuries and, you know, losing some games they shouldn't be losing. They need to get right here, and this is the game they should win. I think Juwan Jennings helps them do that.
Yeah, I think the only way that he doesn't really get there is if it's the injury that limits him, or they just lead into the running game against Dallas defense, because the Dallas defense has struggled defending the run. But overall, like I really like his ranking. I think him and Pearsall are both guys you can play this week. Like you just fire them up and hope it works out against the defense.
Correct.
Let's go to your tier 7. It's a pretty big tier. We can kind of cover it in one just because we're kind of getting in that range of players we're not super confident about. But I'm gonna highlight everybody in here. We're starting out. We have DeAndre Hopkins, the new Kansas City wide receiver. Wide receiver 33 going against Vegas. Wide receiver 34, Darnell Mooney going up against Tampa Bay. Wide receiver 35, Keenan Allen going up against the talked about Washington defense. Wide receiver 36, Romeo Doubs. I guess he's the wide receiver 1 in Green Bay, going up against Jacksonville. Cedric Tillman, this one's probably your spiciest ranking. Wide receiver 37 going up against Baltimore. Wide receiver 38, the expected wide receiver 2, Dante Wicks in Green Bay, going up against Jacksonville. Wide receiver 39, Khalil Shakir going up against the Seahawks defense, which has struggled a lot. And rounding it out in your tier 7, Rome Odunze, wide receiver 40, going up against Washington.
Yeah, we got a couple of Bears. We got a couple of Packers here in this group. I just think it's really hard week to week, obviously, to figure out who is going to receive the majority of the targets. And I think it's because we have some decent coaching going on here, but also all the weapons are very good. So let's look at Green Bay for a second. Romeo Doubs, yeah, I guess he's the wide receiver 1, but I don't know. He had 10 targets last week, but the week before that, he had 4 targets. He's had games with 3 and 2 targets. So I don't really know what to expect. I think it depends what you can do against particular defenses. The problem here with ranking these guys this week is that you can do whatever you want against Jacksonville. Mm-hmm. And so it's really going to depend if they want to throw the ball deep on the boundary to Romeo, if they want to utilize him more in the red zone. Maybe it's going to be a Tucker Kraft week. Maybe it's going to be Jaden Reed. Maybe Christian Watson, because we just don't know. Josh Jacobs scored a goddamn touchdown, right? So last week. So we have no clue what the hell they're doing. But the last 2 weeks for Dobbs, he's the wide receiver 9, the wide receiver 15. He's been able to put it together, both scoring and just receiving the volume. So against Jacksonville, yeah, I do not mind firing him up in the flex as well. And then Cedric Tillman, we have to put a little bit of respect on Cedric Tillman's name. It sounds weird, and I agree with you that the ranking is spicy, but he was the wide receiver 14.5 PPR last week. He received 12 targets. Yes, they came out of nowhere, but once you bench the starting quarterback and you let in the other quarterbacks, you are going to see who they connect with. And you know who they connected with, David Njoku, and they connected with Cedric Tillman, right? Jamari Thrash, Jerry Jeudy, these guys are non-factors. And I really think that Tillman's able to string it together. Is he going to get another double-digit targets? No. That's why he's down at wide receiver 37. But can he look at 7, 8 targets in this game? Absolutely. Also, keep in mind they're playing Baltimore. Number 1, Baltimore is going to score. Number 2, Baltimore is going to control the clock. So Cleveland's going to look to kind of get big chunk plays on him. And number 3, you can get big chunk plays on Baltimore because they have not been able to defend the boundary or the middle or really any of the passing game. So I think Cedric Tillman is going to be probably the number 2 target this week out after Njoku, but he's still going to eat, and he's a flex for me this week.
Yeah, the people that are still holding on to Jerry Judy. I just kind of want to highlight the week 7's usage from them. Tillman versus Judy. First read target share. Tillman was at 31%. Judy was at 12. Yards per route run. Tillman 1.8. Judy 0.35. Targets per route run. 0.27 for Tillman. 0.08 for Judy. Routes run. They're basically even. Judy ran 7 more. And expected fantasy points per route run. Tillman basically triple Judy. 0.54 to 0.2. Yep. It's clear Tillman's like they like Tillman and he's just better. I think Judy just has the name cachet. But yeah, I'm with you. I'd much rather play Tillman in this range. Like he's just the guy that a lot of people know about. So I think that's what makes him really spicy. Let's actually jump to tier 8. This is also a bigger tier for you. This is wide receivers 41 through 47. We're going to just fly through these guys a little bit. Tyler Lockett going up against Buffalo's wide receiver 41. Wide receiver 42, JSN. So the Seahawks wide receivers are back-to-back 41 and 42. We'll see. What this screams to me is you're not sure how this is going to break out. So that's why they're grouped together without DK Metcalf. Wide receiver 43, Troy Franklin going up in a really good matchup against the Carolina defense that's just abysmal. Like, I'll just simply say that. Wide receiver 44, the second guy in the San Francisco wide receiver room, Ricky Pearsall. He's going up against Dallas. Wide receiver 45, Cortland Sutton going against Carolina as well, the Denver. So it's interesting. Franklin and Sutton are kind of back-to-back for your rankings in that group. Wan'Dale Robinson, the guy, I think he's second in the NFL in targets, just has not worked out well for him right now. The last couple of weeks, it's just not. The offense has struggled, and he struggled along with it. He's wide receiver 46. And the last guy rounding out your tier, the third Denver wide receiver in this range. This is Devon Vele going up against Carolina. I think it's clear you like the Denver pass catchers against Carolina defense.
I do. I just don't know which one is coming to play. Cortland Sutton just goose egged last week out of nowhere. I know Sean Payton said, I want to see the young guys. That makes sense, right? Who's the young guy who has the rapport with the quarterback from college? It's Troy Franklin. That's why he's highest of this group, but he's only wide receiver 43, right? So Troy Franklin found the end zone last week, 2 weeks ago, and he received 6 targets last week. He still only finishes the wide receiver 29 and wide receiver 34 in back-to-back weeks. So we're not expecting fireworks from this group. At the same time, they're playing Carolina, right? Somebody's going to score a touchdown. Who's it going to be? I don't know. It could be Bo Nix on the ground 3 times and, another 3 from Javonte. But, I think with both of these groups of receivers, that's Seattle and Denver, I expect the run game to kind of go off for these teams, and I really don't expect a ton out of the pass catchers. So that's why I have them ranked a bit lower here with JSN, who I love, and clearly that love is not reciprocated. He is not. That's an unrequited love for JSN. He has not messaged me back in the form of fantasy points. Except for once this season. So yeah, we'll see. A lot of these guys are kind of just dart throw flexes for you. And I think you can pick any of the Seattle or Denver guys, throw them in your flex and just hope that they find the end zone.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like this, it's a fun range to kind of talk yourself into or talk yourself out of those guys. Like I think Pearsall's probably the most interesting of that group because of the injuries. Like I expect him to be the wide receiver 1 this week. We'll see if Jennings plays. I don't know if he's going to play, but I think the upside is significant with him. But yeah, all these guys you can talk yourself into. It's a good group of wide receivers, so it's a fun group. Rounding out your top 50, we have we'll just say top 51 because you have a 4th guy joining this 8th tier. If I can find the rankings, there they are. We have Josh Downs starting out tier 9. He is wide receiver 48 going against Houston. We have Jalen Tolbert, wide receiver 49 going up against San Francisco. Rashad Bateman, baby. The Bateman is back. Wide receiver 50 going up against Cleveland. And the last guy, maybe the most disappointing wide receiver fantasy this year, Calvin Ridley, wide receiver 51. Who would you like to highlight in this group?
I'm not going to talk about Calvin Ridley. Can't do it. Won't do it. Not going to happen. I did enough of that last season. Let's talk about another disappointing wide receiver, Josh Downs. You know what's disappointing? That the Colts have gone back to Anthony Richardson. I get it from a real life organizational perspective that you have to play Anthony Richardson. I just think that if this team wants to win, they need to start Joe Flacco. If the Browns wanted to win, they would have just started Joe Flacco this season and re-signed him. It's very stupid that these teams like half win. Like they try. Like there's no tanking, right? There doesn't seem to be tanking unless your Cleveland is now tanking. They're trading away all their assets. It's just a very weird situation in the NFL where like Shane Steichen is a good play caller, right? Josh Downs is a great receiver. Michael Pittman is a good receiver. They have the pieces in place. The defense is bad. But what you need to do to combat that bad defense is to score points, and Anthony Richardson struggles to do that. Now they're playing Houston. I don't know, man. Like, this should be a good game for Josh Downs, but he's just not going to receive the targets. And if Josh Downs has a 30% target share, it doesn't matter because that equates to like 4-5 targets. So it's just he's down bad. I'm down bad on Downs. It's just not looking good for him. And who would you pick this week? Josh Downs in a beatable matchup or Jalen Tolbert against San Francisco?
Yeah, I'm gonna take the upside shot Jalen Tolbert, right? That's what it is. That shows you how it sucks. I will highlight with Downs, like his skill set really more as a guy that can hit the horizontal. He's third in like horizontal breaking routes. Anthony Richardson loves the vertical, which is why we've seen him and Alec Pierce connect for these monster shots because Anthony Richardson is like, I have the strongest arm in the NFL. Maybe besides Joe Milton, I'm gonna throw freaking grenade cannons at everybody. So we'll see. They got to get through it. They got to figure out if Richardson is the guy or if he's not the guy. So it's going to be very up and down with that group. Like the dynasty, yeah. With redraft, you probably just sit down. Like let's see how it goes. But it kind of is what it is. That's our week 8 top 50 wide receivers with a bonus. Just a shout out to Calvin Ridley. Like figure it out, Calvin. We need some fancy points for you. We're getting nothing. Give us something for life. That's what we're hoping for. But I think that's gonna cut it out. So this is if you have not already, please subscribe, please comment, share all the work. We appreciate all the support we get back from you because we will internalize and send it back to you guys because this is what we do it for. So I want to say for Jeremy, for myself, for SC, and for Aaron, thank you for joining us in this show. We'll be back since this is dropping Friday. We'll be seeing you guys Saturday with our fun roundtable discussion. So take care, folks. Listen up,